A boring argument about streaming numbers suddenly hit a much uglier question. Can people trust what Spotify is showing when the artist is Drake and every tiny change gets watched like a playoff score? That's why this blew up so fast. Once conflicting screenshots started bouncing around online, the conversation stopped being, "What number is right?" and turned into, "Did Spotify mix up Drake's stats? Or did the internet mistake a moving dashboard for proof?" The screenshots were the fuel. People were pointing at Drake-related pages and saying the numbers didn't line up cleanly across release stats, monthly listeners, playlist tracking, and chart placement signals. One image might make it look like a release was sitting in one position, while another made the surrounding context feel off, or a monthly listener count looked different from what fans thought it should be around the same time. And when that happens during recent platform updates, with pages refreshing, lists shifting, and tracking talk already heated, normal lag can start to look a lot like something being tampered with, which is where the accusation really took hold. That reaction didn't come out of nowhere. Drake is one of the biggest names on the platform, so fans don't read a mismatch like a harmless typo. They read it like a red flag. If a giant artist's numbers seem out of sync, people instantly assume the mistake must mean something bigger, and online that leap happens in minutes. The problem is that once fan suspicion hardens, the question changes from "what exactly are we seeing?" to "who screwed this up?" And that shift makes weak evidence feel stronger than it is. In plain English, there are really only two clean explanations here. One is that Spotify may have briefly displayed incorrect data somewhere in the mix, whether that means a bad update, a temporary mismatch, or some kind of front-end error that made Drake's stats look wrong. The other is a lot less dramatic, but just as possible. People were comparing screenshots taken at different moments, from different views, maybe even from systems that don't update in perfect sync, and treating them like they were supposed to match exactly. That sounds small, but when one screenshot freezes a number in time and another catches a page after a refresh, the internet often reads that gap as evidence instead of timing. And that's the part that matters when you actually check the evidence. Screenshots circulating online can show that people saw something confusing, but by themselves, they usually can't prove whether the underlying count was wrong, delayed, cached, partially updated, or just stripped of context. A cropped image doesn't tell you what refreshed first, what metric it was pulling from, or whether two people were even looking at the same kind of stat. So the outrage feels concrete because the images are concrete, but the proof is thinner than it looks. And once you notice that, the story becomes less about one viral mismatch and more about how fast music fans turn incomplete data into a public verdict. That would be messy enough on its own, but streaming numbers don't just sit there like trivia. They shape headlines, chart arguments, bragging rights, fan narratives, and the general feeling of who's winning right now. If monthly listeners, release stats, playlist tracking, and chart placements appear out of sync, even for a short window, people don't experience that as a technical hiccup. They experience it as a trust problem. And when trust in the metric slips, the platform, the charts, and the artist conversation all get dragged into the same fight, which is exactly why this story matters now, and not just as another Stan War flare-up. So, did Spotify misreport Drake's streams? Right now, the strongest honest answer is, people clearly saw conflicting Drake-related numbers, and that confusion was real, but the public evidence floating around does not cleanly prove a conspiracy, sabotage, or intentional manipulation. What it does prove is how fragile trust becomes when unclear platform data meets viral fandom. Before the next explosive streaming claim races across your feed, check three things first: timing, metric type, and source end if you want more breakdowns that cut through that kind of noise without pretending weak evidence is airtight proof. Subscribe.